The winter court gathered to watch Elara Veyne wear the veil meant for dead mates. Not brides, not widows, dead mates. The frost burial veil lay across a silver altar at the center of the moon hall, thin as breath on glass, and white enough to make every torch around it seem ashamed. It was woven from funeral, snow, wolf silk, and the last exhale of lunar queens whose bonds had broken before their bodies were cold. No living woman wore it unless the court wanted to prove she had already been buried from a man's soul. Elara stood before it with her hands bound in pale chain. No one had chained her because she might run. They had chained her because they wanted the court to see she had not been invited here as a lunar, not even as a woman wronged by a king. She had been brought as evidence. 1 year ago, Alpha King Ronan Veyr had rejected her before the full moon court. His words had been calm. That was what made them cruel. The bond is dead. No shouted rage, no public grief, no hesitation. He had looked at her with eyes the color of storm ice and spoken as if he were cutting away a diseased branch from the kingdom. The court had believed him because kings were easiest to believe when they sounded empty. Elara had not screamed. That was the part they hated. She had only bowed once, turned from the throne, and walked out while her wolf howled inside her chest, so silently it felt like drowning. Since then, they called her the buried Luna. Not former Luna, not rejected mate. Buried. As if Ronan's rejection had been a funeral, and her body simply had not learned to lie still. At the far end of the moon hall, Alpha King Ronan sat beneath the frozen antler throne with both hands closed over the carved arms. He wore black winter armor and a mantle of dark wolf, fur dusted with snow from the outer courtyard. His face was as hard as the mountain behind the palace. Beautiful, feared, unreadable. But Elara saw what others did not. He had not slept. There were shadows beneath his eyes that no king's pride could fully hide, and every few breaths his fingers dug into the throne, as if some pain moved through him from the inside. High Moon Priestess Elara Veyne stepped beside the altar in robes of silver and bone white. Her hair was braided with moon pearls that never reflected fire, only cold light. One pearl near her throat held a thread of black frost that pulsed when Elara looked away. She smiled at the court with the gentleness of a woman offering mercy. By winter law, Elara said, a rejected mate who continues to carry bond. Sickness may endanger the Alpha line. The frost burial veil will show whether any living thread remains between King Ronan and Elara Veyne. A noblewoman whispered, "It will show nothing." Another answered, "Then she will finally stop pretending." Elara kept her eyes on the veil. Pretending. That was what they called survival when it belonged to a woman they wanted humbled. She had never claimed Ronan still loved her. She had never begged for her place. She had scrubbed blood from healing rooms, carried herbs to border wolves, and moved through the palace like a ghost allowed to work but not to belong. But every night for a year, she woke with snow under her fingernails. Not real snow, dream snow. She would claw awake from the same darkness, lungs burning, heart pounding, with the scent of pine and Ronan's blood in her mouth. She told no one. Rejected women were allowed pain, but not mystery. Elara lifted the veil. The moon hall cooled at once. Every wolf in the room lowered its head, not in reverence, but instinctive dread. Only Ronan's wolf did not bow. Behind his throne, his shadow shifted. Elara saw it before anyone else. A black wolf, shape rising and vanishing behind him, muzzle dusted white as if it had been digging through snow. Ronan's gaze snapped to her. For one dangerous heartbeat, the emptiness in his face broke. He saw that she had seen. Then Elara spoke. Elara Veyne, once named Luna by moon bond, now severed by royal rejection, stepped forward. The chain at Elara's wrists chimed as she moved. Her knees wanted to weaken. She did not allow them. If the court wanted her buried, they would not get the pleasure of watching her crawl into the grave. Elara's voice softened. "Do you submit to the veil?" Elara looked at Ronan. He had gone utterly still. The whole court waited for him to speak, to stop this. to confirm it, to do anything except sit there with his jaw locked and his eyes fixed on the white veil as if it were a blade at his own throat. He said nothing. The silence hurt worse than the chains. Elara turned back to Selvara. "I submit to truth," she said, "not to burial." A ripple moved through the court. Selvara's smile thinned. "Then let truth bury what pride has kept breathing." She placed the frost burial veil over Elara's head. Cold slammed through her skull. Elara's vision vanished beneath white. For one breath, there was only silence. Then the veil screamed, not like cloth, like a wolf waking under ice. Every torch in the moon hall went blue. Snow burst across the black marble floor, spinning upward instead of falling. The silver altar cracked from end to end, and the veil lifted from Elara's face though no hand touched it. Behind her, the air opened. A dream appeared above the court. Not symbol, not memory. A living nightmare made of moonlight and snow. Alpha King Ronan Veyr knelt in a frozen forest beneath a blood-red moon, armor broken, hands bare and bleeding as he dug through a snowdrift with the desperation of a man clawing into his own grave. "Elara!" "The dream," Ronan rasped. The court stopped breathing. The real Ronan rose from his throne. In the dream, his wolf tore at the snow beside him, black fur-iced white, eyes wild with grief. "Wake up, dream," Ronan begged, voice breaking as he uncovered a woman's frozen hand beneath the snow. "Please, wake up." Elara could not move. The hand in the snow was hers. Selvara stepped back from the veil, all mercy gone from her face. Ronan looked from the dream to Elara, and for the first time in a year, the Alpha King looked afraid. The frost burial veil tightened around Elara like a living thing. Then a voice whispered from inside the white cloth, old and female and hungry. His mouth rejected her. The dream wolf lifted its bloody muzzle, but his wolf has been digging ever since. The dream did not fade. It widened. Snow poured through the air above the moon hall, not falling onto the court, but turning within the vision like the inside of a storm trapped behind glass. The dream Ronan kept digging, his fingers torn open, his breath ragged white in the blood-red moonlight. Beside him, his black wolf clawed at the snow with the fury of a beast trying to tear open death itself. Elara stood beneath the frost burial veil and felt the cold of that dream enter her bones. She knew that snow, not because she had seen it, because she had been inside it. For a year, every nightmare had ended with her buried beneath white silence, unable to move, unable to call out, or something far above her tore through the drifts and begged her to wake. She had believed grief was punishing her. She had believed rejection had made her mind cruel. Now the entire court watched the Alpha King live the same nightmare. Ronan took one step down from the throne, the real Ronan. His face had gone ashen beneath the cold blue fire of the hall. The court parted for him without command, every wolf lowering its gaze as if they feared what might happen if he looked too long at the dream. Selvara recovered first. "Veil distortion," she said sharply. No one answered. The dream, Ronan's voice, broke across the hall. "Elara, breathe. I found you. I found you." In the dream, he pulled more snow away, uncovering Elara's face beneath the ice. Her lips were blue. Frost clung to her lashes. A silver thread, thin as a strand of moonlight, wrapped around her throat and disappeared into the snow below her. The real Elara reached for her own throat. The veil tightened. Ronan saw. His eyes flashed wolf gold. "Take it off her." Selvara stepped between him and the altar. "Your Majesty, the rite has begun. If the veil is removed before truth completes, whatever bond, sickness remains may recoil into the Alpha line. Take it off." The command struck the walls. Several guards moved, then stopped when Selvara lifted one hand. That was when Elara noticed the pearl at the priestess's throat. The thread of black frost inside it pulsed in time with the silver cord around Dream Elara's neck. A thin, impossible suspicion opened inside her. "Ronan," she said. His gaze snapped to her. The sound of his name from her mouth changed him more than the dream had. For one heartbeat, the king disappeared, and the man who had once touched her hair as if moonlight might bruise became visible beneath armor and pride. Then he buried him again. "Elara," he said, lower now, "do not move." She almost laughed. The court had chained her, veiled her, buried her in ritual snow, and now he told her not to move as if stillness had ever saved her. But she heard the tremor beneath his command. Fear. For her. Salvara's voice cut through it. The veil is showing residual guilt. The king's dreams are not evidence of a living bond. Rejected mates often leave wounds. The dream wolf snarled. Every real wolf in the hall flinched. Behind the veil, Elara's vision flickered. For one terrifying breath, she was no longer standing in the moon hall. She was under snow, chest locked, mouth full of winter. Above her, Ronan's voice came muffled through layers of frozen dream. "Wake up." Then she was back. Her knees buckled. Ronan crossed the hall faster than any guard could stop him. He caught her before she struck the floor. The court gasped. His arms closed around her, hard and careful at once. The frost burial veil surged white between them, trying to stiffen, trying to force his hands away. Ronan hissed as frost burned across his gauntlets, but he did not release her. Elara looked up through the veil. He was too close. Close enough for her to see the ruin sleeplessness had made of him. Close enough to see that his pupils had turned to wolf slits. Close enough to feel his body shaking with restraint. "You rejected me," she whispered. Pain moved across his face like a blade under skin. "I know. Not denial. Not excuse." That answer hurt differently. Salvara's tone sharpened. "Your Majesty, step away from her." Ronan did not. The white veil lifted around Elara's face, and the dream behind them shifted. The court saw another night. The same moon hall 1 year ago. Ronan stood before Elara in the memory, his expression frozen, his voice steady as death. The bond is dead. But behind him, unseen by the court that night, his shadow wolf reared violently, teeth bared, fighting something wrapped around its muzzle. Black frost bound the wolf's jaws shut. It tried to howl, tried to lunge toward Elara, but Salvara stood near the throne with one hand closed around her moon pearls. The real hall went silent. Ronan turned slowly toward the priestess. Salvara's face remained composed, but the pearl at her throat darkened. The veil whispered again. Waking mouth, bound wolf, borrowed words. Elara stopped breathing. Ronan's rejection had sounded empty because something had emptied it. His mouth had spoken. His wolf had been gagged. Ronan's hands tightened around Elara. "What did you do?" Salvara lifted her chin. "I saved your reign." The words carried no shame, only certainty. A growl moved through Ronan's chest. The veil screamed once more, and the dream snow behind them collapsed inward, revealing a darker place beneath the drift. A buried door made of ice, marked with the shape of a sleeping wolf's eye. Elara felt something inside her answer. Not her waking wolf. Something older, something that had survived beneath dreams. Her wrists strained against the pale chain. The ice door in the dream opened 1 black inch. From within came a woman's voice, faint and cold as moonlight under snow. "Dream. Wolf. Blood." Salvara went pale. Ronan looked down at Elara, as if the name had struck him in the heart. Then the frost burial veil wrapped itself tighter around her throat and pulled her toward the dream. The veil pulled Elara out of the moon hall without moving her body. One heartbeat, Ronan's arms were around her and the court was shouting through blue torchlight. The next, the world became snow. She fell onto her knees in a frozen forest beneath a blood-red moon. The cold hit first. Not winter cold, grave cold, dream cold. The kind that did not bite skin, but memory. The trees around her were black pines bent under white drifts, their branches heavy as mourning veils. No stars burned overhead. Only the red moon watched through clouds shaped like sleeping wolves. Elara looked down. Her chains were gone. The frost burial veil still covered her head, longer now, trailing behind her across the snow like a bridal train dragged through a funeral. Every thread glowed faintly silver, and each breath she took made the cloth tighten around her throat. Then she saw the pit, a hollow in the snow before her, half dug, ringed with bloody handprints. Her handprints? No, Ronan's. Elara. She turned. Ronan stood 10 paces away, no throne, no court, no crown. His black armor was broken across one shoulder exactly as it had been in the dream. Blood darkened his fingers. Snow clung to his hair and lashes. Behind him, his black wolf shadow paced with its muzzle wrapped in black frost. The sight struck deeper than anger. He had been here before. Not once, hundreds of times. "You followed me," she said. His eyes moved over her quickly, searching for wounds. "The veil took you." "That is not an answer." "No." His jaw tightened. "I came after you." The words should have meant too little after a year of silence. Instead, the forest seemed to hear them. Somewhere beneath the snow, a low sound answered. Not a growl, not a howl. A sleeping wolf turning over in its grave. Ronan stepped toward her. The veil snapped tight. Elara gasped, and silver threads shot from the cloth into the snow, rooting her in place. Ronan stopped at once, hands opening at his sides. "I won't touch you," he said. She almost hated that he understood. Almost. The forest shifted. Between the trees, images appeared like reflections on ice. The moon hall 1 year ago, Ronan standing before her. Selvara beside the throne, one pearl at her throat black with frost. Elara remembered only the public rejection, but the dream showed what memory had hidden. Ronan's hand shaking before he spoke, his wolf shadow clawing at the floor, black frost sealing its mouth. Then Selvara's voice. "Say it, Majesty. If you do not sever her, the dream wolf will open the buried door." Ronan in the memory looked dazed, his eyes half blank with moon sleep. "The bond is dead," he said. Elara's chest tightened so hard she almost could not breathe. The real Ronan watched the vision with a face carved from pain. "I remember standing there," he said. "I remember the words. I do not remember choosing them." Elara wanted the truth to heal something. It did not. It only changed the shape of the wound. "You let me live with them." Ronan flinched. No defense came. Good. She was not ready for excuses. The snow beneath them cracked. A silver trail opened from Elara's feet toward the buried ice door she had glimpsed in the veil. It stood between 2 black pines, taller than any palace gate, its surface carved with the sleeping wolf's eye. Behind the ice, something breathed in slow, ancient rhythm. Ronan's wolf shadow lunged toward it. The black frost around its muzzle tightened, dragging it back. Ronan staggered as if the binding had cut into his own throat. Elara saw blood bead at his lip. Despite herself, she moved toward him. The veil yanked her back. Ronan's voice roughened. "Do not." She froze. "Your wolf is still bound." "Yes." "For a year." His silence answered. The anger inside her found nowhere clean to go. Selvara had not only made him reject her, she had trapped his wolf in the dream afterward, forcing him to dig every night for the mate his waking mouth had buried. The cruelty was too precise to be madness. It was design. A whisper moved through the pines. Dream wolf blood. The ice door's eye opened. Elara felt her own wolf rise inside her chest, not with a howl, but with a memory of walking through snow before she had ever been born. Pale pause, silver breath. A woman's voice singing under moonlight so deep it became sleep. Ronan stared at her. "What are you?" The question cut before he seemed to realize it. Elara's face hardened. He closed his eyes once. "No, that is not what I meant. But it is what you asked." The forest darkened around them. He opened his eyes, and for the first time since the dream began, the Alpha King lowered his head. Not fully, not like a subject. Enough to cost him pride. I do not know how to ask without sounding like a king." Elara looked away before that could reach her too deeply. The ice door opened wider. From inside came wind-carrying voices, women whispering names, wolves breathing in sleep, children crying beneath snow, old bonds hidden where waking law could not reach them. Then Selvara appeared in the dream. Not bodily. Her image formed in the red moonlight, silver robes untouched by snow, black frost pearl glowing at her throat. "Elara Veyne," she said softly. "Step away from the door." Ronan turned with a snarl. "Release my wolf." Selvara's gaze flicked to him. "If I do, he will choose what you were born to destroy." Elara's hand curled. "What is behind that door?" Selvara looked at her with something colder than hatred. Recognition. The grave your bloodline refused to stay inside. The frost burial veil tightened, dragging Elara across the snow toward the ice door. Not away. Toward it. Ronan lunged. His bound wolf shadow lunged with him. The black frost around the wolf's muzzle cracked once. Elara reached for the door before fear could stop her. Her palm touched the sleeping wolf's eye. The dream went silent. Then every buried voice behind the ice whispered her true name. The name did not sound like speech. It sounded like snow remembering blood. Elara's palm remained pressed to the sleeping wolf's eye carved into the ice door, and behind it 1,000 hidden breaths whispered through the frozen dark. Elara Veyne, dream wolf daughter, last walker under buried moons. The words moved through her bones before her mind could hold them. She saw flashes that were not hers, women crossing dream, snow with silver wolves beside them, lunar queens asleep with one hand over their hearts while their spirits guarded mate bonds from knives no waking court could see, children hidden in winter cradles, while priestesses painted false death over their names. Then the door pulled at her. Not open. Inward. Ronan caught her wrist before the dream could swallow her. The contact sent pain through them both. Elara gasped as a year of cold rushed between their skin, nights of snow over her mouth, nights of Ronan's hands bleeding in the drifts, nights his wolf clawed until its nails broke against black frost. The bond was not gone. It had been buried alive between them, and every dream had been a grave Ronan was forced to dig from the wrong side. He released her at once, breathing hard. "I am sorry." The words came raw, too late, too small, but real enough to hurt. Elara pulled her hand back against her chest. "Sorry does not unbury a year." "I know." "Do you?" Her voice shook, and the dream forest answered with falling snow. "You stood before them and ended me." Ronan's face tightened. "My mouth did, and I lived with it." The black wolf shadow behind him lowered its head. Ronan did not look away from her. Yes. No defense. No king's pride. Only the truth, and that made her anger tremble because it had wanted something harder to strike. Selvara's dream image stepped between two black pines, moon pearls shining at her throat. The pearl with black frost pulsed faster now, each beat tightening the veil around Elara's neck. "You see why dream, wolf blood is dangerous," Selvara said. "It makes grief sound like law. It makes buried bonds beg to live. It turns rejection into accusation." Elara faced her. "You made him speak. I protected the kingdom from what your blood opens. What does it open?" The ice door answered before Selvara could. A crack ran from the sleeping wolf's eye down to the snow. Beyond it, Elara glimpsed a chamber made of moonlit ice. Inside were silver threads stretched from wall to wall, each one ending in a sleeping wolf curled beneath frost. Some threads had been cut. Some had been tied in knots. Some pulsed faintly, waiting for mates who would never know they had been stolen from each other. Ronan stepped closer, eyes fixed on the chamber. "Mate, bonds," he said. Selvara's expression sharpened. Elara understood. The dream realm was not only a grave, it was a vault, a place where old moon priestesses buried bonds that waking courts could not control. Dangerous mates, politically inconvenient lunars, wolves that chose against arranged alliances, Kings whose true bonds threatened council power. Ronan's voice turned deadly quiet. How many? Silvara looked at him with cold pity. Enough to keep winter from civil war. The dream wolf snarled behind Ronan, black frost cracking again at its muzzle. Silvara lifted one hand. The frost burial veil tightened around Elara's throat until white spots burst in her vision. Ronan moved instantly, but the snow between them rose like a wall. "Touch her again," he said, "and I will tear this realm apart." "You cannot," Silvara said, "not while your wolf is muzzled, not while her blood stands at the door, and not while the court above sees only what I choose the veil to show." "Elara Froze." "The court cannot see this?" Silvara smiled. Above the dream, the red moon flickered like an eye opening. A second vision appeared in the sky, the moon hole from above, where Elara's body stood under the frost, burial veil, still and pale, while Ronan's body knelt beside her with one hand on her shoulder. The nobles watched in terror, but the dream shown behind them had changed. It no longer showed Ronan digging for Elara. It showed Elara standing over a sleeping black wolf with her hands around its throat. Gasps echoed faintly through the veil from the real court. Silvara had twisted the witness. Ronan saw it too. Fury burned through his eyes. "You are making her the threat. I am showing them what they already fear." Elara's lungs struggled against the veil. The old instinct returned. "Lower your head. Make yourself smaller. Survive the accusation." But there was nowhere small enough in a dream. The snow already knew her name. Inside the ice door, the buried wolves began to stir. Not loudly, not enough to save her, but enough to listen. Elara pressed one hand to the veil at her throat and forced air through the cold. "You said dream. Wolf blood makes buried bonds beg to live," she whispered. Silvara's eyes narrowed. Elara looked toward the wolves behind the ice. "Then let them beg." She did not know how to use the power. She did not reach for command. She remembered being buried every night and still waking. She remembered scrubbing healing floors while the court called her a dead Luna. She remembered Ronan's dream hands bleeding above her, unable to reach the right place. She breathed in. Then she howled. Not with her mouth. With the part of her that had survived under snow. The ice door shook. One sleeping wolf opened its eyes. Then another. Then 100 silver threads flared behind the door, and the false vision above the moon hall shattered. For one heartbeat, the real court saw the truth. Elara not strangling Ronan's wolf, but standing before an ice vault full of buried mate, bonds, while Silvara held the black frost pearl like a leash. The moon hall erupted. Silvara's calm broke. Ronan's wolf shadow lunged again, and this time the black frost around its muzzle split wide enough for one sound to escape. A howl. It struck the dream forest like thunder. The veil flew loose from Elara's throat. Ronan crossed the snow wall in one violent motion and caught her before she fell. This time, she had the strength to push one hand against his chest. "Do not carry me like forgiveness has already happened." He stopped. Pain crossed his face. Then, slowly, he let her stand on her own. Behind them, the ice door opened another inch. And from inside the dream vault, a woman's voice whispered, older than Silvara's law, "Bring the rejected king and the buried Luna before the first sleeping bond." The first sleeping bond waited beneath the ice like a moon drowned before it could rise. Elara saw it when the vault door opened wide enough for the dream to breathe out. Beyond the threshold stretched a chamber made entirely of frozen moonlight. Silver threads crossed from wall to wall, some bright, some dim, some blackened where they had been cut and tied again by hands that feared what wolves might choose without permission. Beneath each thread slept a wolf shape half buried in frost. Some were white, some gray, some black as winter midnight. Their chests rose slowly, one breath every few moments, as if sleep had become a kind of prison that did not know how to end. Ronan stood beside Elara, not touching her now. That mattered. The court above still shouted through the torn edge of the veil. their voices faint as wind over graves. Selvara remained somewhere between dream and waking, her black frost pearl pulsing like a second heart at her throat. The false vision had shattered, but Elara knew the priestess would not stop. A woman who had buried this many bonds would not surrender because one had learned to breathe. The old voice whispered again from deep inside the vault. Before the first sleeping bond, the silver threads parted, revealing a wolf curled on a slab of ice at the chamber's center. It was not Ronan's. It was not Elara's. The wolf was pale gold, old and thin, with a crown-shaped scar across its brow. A red cord had been tied around its ribs so tightly that each breath seemed to cut it deeper. Beside it, carved into the ice, was a woman's name. Werewolf. Elara did not know the name. Ronan did. His face changed. "My grandmother," he said. The words came low, almost unwillingly. "She died before I was born," the old voice answered. "Her body died. Her bond did not." Ronan knelt before the ice slab. The movement looked strange on him. Not weak, but stripped of throne and crown. "The court records say she was mate-buried after my grandfather's death." "Records are waking snow," the voice whispered. "They cover what bites underneath." The sleeping wolf's eye opened. Elara felt its gaze move through her, not seeing her face, seeing the blood beneath her skin, the dream paths hidden inside her bones. Dream wolf blood. The words no longer sounded like title or power. They sounded like inheritance with teeth. A vision rose from the ice. A young Luna stood in the moon hall generations ago, wearing a veil just like Elara's. Her mate, an alpha king with Ronan's mouth and colder eyes, stood beside another woman in council silver. The young Luna did not scream when they named her bond unstable. She only placed both hands over her stomach. A child. The court had not wanted that child. Not from her. Not from a Luna whose wolf could walk dreams and hear buried bonds. Selvara's voice came from behind them, softer now. "You see? It began long before me." Elara turned. The priestess had entered the vault. Snow clung to the hem of her robes, but she walked as if she had crossed this chamber many times. The black frost pearl at her throat glowed fiercely, feeding thin, dark lines into the silver threads around them. Ronan rose. "You buried my grandmother's bond." Selvara's eyes did not flinch. "My order did, because dream wolf blood does not merely survive dream realms. It enters the places where mate bonds hide from law. It can wake forbidden bonds, expose arranged alliances, break treaties sealed by marriage. It can make a kingdom answer to longing instead of rule." Elara looked at the sleeping wolf with the red cord around its ribs. "So you called them unstable. We called them dangerous." Ronan's voice hardened. "You called my bloodline safer when it was half asleep." Selvara's gaze cut to him. "Your bloodline survived because of restraint." The pale gold wolf on the ice whimpered. Elara stepped closer. The silver thread above it hummed, and sudden cold shot into her palm. She saw Veyr in fragments, running through snow with a wolf at her side, hiding a newborn daughter beneath a dream door, pressing a kiss to the child's brow before priestesses dragged her away. Not dead, buried from memory. Her bond sealed so her descendants would forget what the royal line owed to dream wolf women. Elara's breath shook. "She was mine too," she whispered. Ronan looked at her. The realization moved between them like a blade and a bridge at once. Veyr had not only been his grandmother, she had been part of Elara's hidden line. The rejected Luna and the Alpha King had been tied by buried history long before Ronan's waking mouth rejected her. Selvara saw the understanding form. Her expression hardened. "That is why I severed you," she said. "Not because I hated you, because if your bond completed, the old line would reopen. Dream, wolf blood would return to the throne, and every buried bond in this vault would begin to call for judgment." Elara looked at the rows of sleeping wolves. "And they should. They will tear the kingdom apart." "No," Elara said. "What tears a kingdom apart is building it over living graves." The vault answered. Every silver thread trembled. Ronan's bound wolf shadow stepped into the chamber behind him. Black frost still cracked around its muzzle. It looked at the pale gold wolf on the ice and lowered its head. The first sleeping bond breathed again. Selvara lifted the black frost pearl. "Do not wake it." Ronan moved toward her, but the red cord around the sleeping wolf tightened sharply. The wolf convulsed. Ronan stopped. Selvara's voice was controlled, but Elara heard the panic beneath it. "If that bond wakes, the veil above will show the court everything. Every burial, every false rejection, every noble marriage built over a silenced mate. Blood will answer blood." Elara stepped to the ice slab. Ronan caught her gaze. Not her hand. "A question. Not command. Can you do this?" Elara hated that her answer mattered to him, hated that it warmed some frozen, wounded place inside her anyway. "I do not know," she said. His voice lowered. "Then do not do it for me." She looked at him sharply. Ronan's eyes held hers. "Do it only if the buried ask you." The pale gold wolf opened both eyes. It looked at Elara. Then, with a voice like snow cracking under spring, it whispered inside her mind. "Wake me, daughter." Elara placed her palm on the red cord. Selvara screamed. "No." The black frost pearl burst open, and from inside it spilled hundreds of tiny stolen dreams. They flew at Elara like knives. Ronan's wolf finally tore its muzzle free and leapt between them. The dream vault exploded into silver light. Silver light tore through the dream vault. For one breath, Elara saw nothing but stolen dreams. They burst from Selvara's shattered pearl like birds cut from ice. Tiny fragments of moonlit rooms, trembling hands, wolves crying behind closed eyes, lovers waking with tears they did not understand. Each dream had been folded small, frozen black at the edges, and kept inside the pearl at the priestess's throat like trophies no one had known were missing. Then the fragments struck Ronan's wolf. The black wolf shadow threw itself before Elara, jaws finally free of frost, and took the storm into its body. It did not fall. It howled. The sound shattered every sleeping breath in the vault. Silver threads snapped bright. Frost rained from the ceiling. The pale gold wolf on the ice slab lifted its head fully for the first time in generations, and the red cord around its ribs burned like a wound open to air. Ronan staggered as if the howl had torn through his own chest. Elara reached for him, then stopped. Not because she did not care, because the sleeping wolf had asked her, "Wake me, daughter." The red cord under her palm writhed like a living vein. It was not only wrapped around Merisvel's bond. It ran through the vault, through Selvara's pearl remnants, through the frost burial veil above, and into the old law that had taught courts to call buried women unstable. Elara closed her fingers around it. Pain entered her hand. Not sharp, deep. A sorrow old enough to have become weather. She saw Merisvel under the veil, kneeling in the moon hall while nobles declared her bond dangerous. She saw her mate watching from the throne, eyes dulled by moon sleep, his wolf crying soundlessly behind him. She saw priestesses pulling Myris into the dream vault. She saw Selvara's order learning, generation by generation, how to take a living bond and make it look dead. Elara nearly let go. Ronan's voice reached her through the light. "Elara, not command. Anchor." She looked at him. His wolf stood between her and the storm of stolen dreams, black fur torn with silver light, blood-dark shadows dripping from its muzzle where the frost had finally broken. Ronan's face was drawn tight with pain, but he did not step in front of her. He did not take the cord from her hand. He let her choose. That, more than the dream, changed something. Elara turned back to Myris's wolf. "Do you want waking?" The vault went still. Selvara stared at her. "What are you doing?" Elara did not look away from the pale gold wolf, asking. The priestess's laugh came brittle and afraid. "Bonds do not answer questions. They obey blood." "No," Elara said. "That is what you made them do." The red cord pulsed. The pale gold wolf rose slowly from the ice slab. Its body trembled with the weakness of too many stolen years, but its eyes were clear. It pressed its muzzle to Elara's bleeding palm. Yes. The answer did not come as a word. It came as warmth. Elara sang no spell, spoke no law. She only held the cord and gave the buried bond room to breathe. The red binding split beneath her hand. Maris's wolf threw its head back and howled. In the moon hall above, the frost burial veil lifted from Elara's still body and showed the full dream to the court. Not Selvara's false vision, not a twisted threat, the truth. The nobles saw Maris Veyr buried in the dream vault. They saw Ronan's wolf gagged for a year. They saw Elara asking the first sleeping bond whether it wanted to wake, and they saw the bond answer her. Panic erupted above like thunder muffled under ice. Selvara's face hardened. You have no idea what you are releasing. The vault floor cracked beneath her feet. From inside the broken pearl, more stolen dreams crawled toward her robes, clinging like frost-burned hands. The priestess stepped back, but the dreams followed. Ronan's voice turned dangerous. How many did you take? Selvara looked at him, and for the first time, anger stripped away her holy calm. Enough to keep alphas from destroying their packs over forbidden mates. Enough to stop lunar bloodlines from overruling treaties. Enough to keep kings from becoming servants to dreams. Ronan's eyes flashed. You made me reject her. I made your mouth save your crown. My crown was never yours to save. The words shook the vault. His wolf shadow grew behind him, no longer muzzled, though black frost still clung to its chest like old chain links. It stepped towards Selvara, and every sleeping wolf in the chamber turned its head to watch. Selvara lifted both hands. The torn remnants of the frost burial veil gathered around Elara's dream body, binding her arms and throat. In the moon hall above, her real body jerked under the veil. Ronan moved. Elara gasped. No. He stopped with visible effort. Selvara's smile returned, thin and desperate. If the dream wolf daughter wakes them all, she dies in the waking hall. Her body cannot hold this many buried bonds. Elara knew she was not lying. The vault pressed against her blood now, hundreds of sleeping wolves stirring, each one a grief, a thread, a name. If they all called at once, she would vanish into the dream and leave only a cold body beneath the veil. Ronan looked at her. This time, fear was naked in his face. Come back, he said. The words broke something in her. A year ago, he had told the court the bond was dead. Now he stood inside its grave, asking her to live. Elara wanted to answer, but Maris's wolf stepped between them. The pale gold spirit touched its muzzle to the ground before Elara. Not taboo. A request. The old voice returned, clearer now. One bond wakes the door. One bond names the keeper. One bond must choose the path. Elara looked at Ronan. He understood before she did. Our bond, he said. Selvara's eyes went cold. The dream vault opened beneath them, revealing a second layer of snow darkness below the ice. At its center lay a silver thread wrapped in black frost, pulsing weakly between two buried wolf shadows. One black, one white. Ronan's wolf. Elara's. The frost burial veil whispered from above, no longer hungry now, but afraid. Rejected bond, buried living, awaiting name. Selvara lunged for the thread. Ronan's wolf attacked. Elara reached first. Her fingers closed around the frozen bond between them, and the dream showed her the night Ronan truly lost his voice. The frozen bond burned colder than death. Elara's fingers closed around the silver thread, and the dream vault vanished. She stood inside another night. Not the public rejection. Before it, the moon hall was empty except for Alpha King Ronan Veyr and High Moon Priestess Selvara Thorn. No nobles, no banners, no court to witness the theft. Snow pressed against the high windows from outside, and every torch burned low and blue, as if the palace itself had been ordered to whisper. Ronan stood before the frozen antler throne with one hand braced on its arm. He looked younger by a year, but grief had already begun to hollow him. His black wolf shadow paced behind him, restless and whole, its eyes fixed on the hall doors, waiting for Elara. In the memory, Ronan turned toward Selvara. The council wants the bond severed. The council fears dream, wolf blood, Selvara said. So do you? Yes. The honesty startled Elara. Selvara had not lied that night, not at first. Ronan's jaw tightened. Elara is my mate. She is a door. She is a woman. She is both. Selvara stepped closer, moon pearls cold against her throat. And if you crown her Luna, every buried bond in the north will begin to stir. Old claims, broken alliances, forbidden pairings your ancestors paid blood to silence. You will not inherit a kingdom. You will inherit every dream it buried. Ronan's wolf snarled. The sound shook frost from the pillars. Ronan did not move. Then we dig them out. Elara's heart twisted. Selvara's face changed. There it was the moment she understood he would not choose caution. The priestess lifted one hand, and the black frost pearl at her throat opened like a small, dark eye. Ronan felt it too late. His wolf shadow lunged, but black frost shot from the pearl and wrapped around its muzzle. Ronan staggered, hand flying to his throat. No blade touched him, yet his voice broke in half. Selvara whispered, "Forgive me, Majesty." Ronan tried to speak. No sound came. The priestess caught his face between both hands, not tenderly, but with the sorrow of someone committing a sin she had already justified. When the court gathers, you will say the words. You will reject her before she opens what cannot be closed. Ronan's eyes blazed wolf gold. He fought. Elara saw it now. Every muscle locked, every breath shaking, his wolf tearing at the frost around its jaws until dark blood spilled across the floor. But Selvara pressed her thumb to his lips, and black frost slid into his mouth. "Your waking voice will save the crown," she said. "Your dreaming wolf may hate me for it." The memory lurched. The next day appeared. The full moon caught. Elara saw herself standing before Ronan in silver lunar robes, unaware she had already been buried by a decision made in a room where she had not been allowed to stand. Ronan looked at her. No. The real Ronan inside the memory looked at her. Behind the borrowed emptiness, something screamed. His wolf shadow threw itself against invisible chains. His hand twitched once toward her. Selvara's pearl pulsed. The black frost tightened inside his throat. Then his mouth opened. "The bond is dead." Elara felt the words again, as if hearing them for the first time. Only now she heard what was underneath. A strangled howl. A plea trapped behind royal teeth. "Elara, run." The memory shattered. She fell back into the dream vault with a cry. Ronan caught her by the shoulders, then released her instantly when she stiffened. His face had gone pale in the silver light. He had seen all of it with her. The stolen voice, the gagged wolf, the rejection he had spoken and never chosen. "Elara," he said. She shook her head once. Not because she refused the truth, because truth did not erase the year that followed. "You remembered nothing?" "Pieces," he said, voice rough. "Pain, snow, your hand under ice. Every morning I woke with blood under my nails and no wound I could name." His wolf stood behind him, no longer fully muzzled, but black frost still coiled around its chest and ribs. Elara's own white wolf shadow had appeared at last beside the frozen thread, half buried in dream snow, eyes open but body weak. She had not known how tired her wolf was. For a year, it had been breathing under the rejection. Selvara stood near the broken pearl, surrounded by stolen dreams. "Now you know. And now you understand why I cannot let that bond wake in front of the court." Ronan turned on her. The vault darkened. Selvara lifted one shard of the black pearl. "If you kill me here, Majesty, every sleeping bond tied to my order breaks at once. Half your nobles wake with forbidden wolves screaming in their blood. The other half call you Oathbreaker. Your throne becomes a battlefield before dawn." Ronan's hands curled. Elara saw the trap. Selvara had bound herself to the vault, not out of arrogance alone, but insurance. If she fell wrongly, every buried bond would tear open without guidance. The court would panic. Ronan would be blamed. Elara would be named the curse that destroyed Winter Order. The old voice from the vault whispered again, "One bond must choose the path." Elara looked down at the frozen thread between her wolf and Ronan's. Their bond. Not dead. Not whole. Buried living. "What path?" she asked. The vault answered by opening the snow beneath the thread. Below it lay 2 doors. One was made of black ice, carved with Ronan's crown. The other was made of white snow, carved with Elara's veil. Selvara's eyes sharpened. "Do not." Ronan looked at the doors. "What are they?" Elara knew before the voice answered. His rejection, her burial, 2 halves of one wound. The old voice breathed through the ice. To wake the bond, the king must enter what his mouth did. The black door pulsed, and the Luna must enter what his silence made. The white door opened 1 inch. Ronan's face hardened. "No." Elara gave a short, bitter breath. Still commanding, pain flashed across his eyes. "No," he said, afraid. The honesty stopped her. He looked at the white door as if it were a grave he had dug with his own hands. "I will not ask you to suffer more for my voice." Elara's throat tightened. Part of her wanted to accept that. Part of her wanted him to stand between her and every cold thing for the rest of his life until the year became less sharp. But Dreamwolf blood did not command buried bonds. It asked if they wanted to live. Elara looked at her white wolf shadow, half buried and still watching Ronan's black wolf with hurt, longing, and exhaustion. "What happens if we do not enter?" she asked. The old voice answered. "The bond sleeps. The veil names her dead. The court believes the burial. The priestess wins by silence." Selvara stepped closer, and the kingdom remains standing. Elara looked at her. "No," she said. "It remains frozen." Ronan's gaze found hers. No demand. No king. Only a man who had dug through dreams for a year and still knew he had no right to ask for forgiveness. Elara reached for the white door. Ronan reached for the black. Their wolves lifted their heads. At the same time, they entered the 2 halves of the wound, and the dream vault sealed behind them. Ronan entered the black door and found himself standing in his own mouth. Not a hole, not a forest. A mouth, vast, dark, and frozen from within. Teeth rose around him like white cliffs. His tongue was a black road under his boots, split by veins of frost. Above, where breath should have moved, hung thousands of unsaid words, trapped in ice like dead birds. "Elara, forgive me. Run. Help her. I choose her." Each one hung silent. Ronan's hands curled until his knuckles cracked. This was what his rejection had become. A prison built from words he had not been allowed to speak and 1 sentence he had. At the center of the frozen mouth stood his own wolf, chained by black frost to the root of his tongue. Its muzzle was no longer fully bound, but the chains ran through its throat into Ronan's chest. Every time the wolf tried to howl, a shard of ice fell from the ceiling and became his old voice. "The bond is dead." The sentence struck the floor. Again. "The bond is dead." Again. Each repetition drove the wolf lower. Ronan walked toward it. The chains tightened around his ribs. Pain nearly dropped him, but he did not stop. He had spent a year waking with blood under his nails and no memory strong enough to explain the wound. Now he saw the truth. Some part of him had been digging for Elara every night while his waking body sat on a throne built over lies. He knelt before his wolf. "I heard you too late," he said. The wolf bared its teeth, not in threat, in grief. Ronan reached for the chain at its throat. A voice moved through the frozen mouth behind him. Selvara's voice. "She will not forgive you." Ronan did not turn. "She does not owe me forgiveness." The chain burned black around his hand. Selvara's voice softened. "Then why suffer?" Ronan closed his fist around the frost. "Because my voice hurt her, whether I owned it or not." The frozen words above him began to crack. Across the dream wound, Elara stepped into the white door and found herself under snow. not standing in it. Under it. She lay on her back in a narrow hollow of ice, wrapped in the frost burial veil from throat to ankle. Her hands were free, but the snow pressed so heavily above her that she could barely lift them. Every breath came thin. Every sound died before it reached the surface. This was the place she had lived inside for a year, the burial Ronan's silence made. Above her, she heard the court from memory. Buried Luna, still breathing, still pretending. Then Ronan's voice from that day. The bond is dead. The snow thickened. Elara squeezed her eyes shut. She had told herself she was angry because he rejected her. That was true, but not all of it. The deeper wound was that after he spoke, no one came to ask whether she survived hearing it. The palace kept using her hands. The healers still sent for her. The wounded still bled into cloth she washed. But everyone had treated her heart as something already placed beneath snow. A white wolf lay beside her, half buried, breathing shallowly. Elara reached for it. "I am here," she whispered. The wolf's eyes opened. They held no blame, only exhaustion. A shape moved above the snow. Ronan. Not real. A memory of him digging through the drifts, bloody hands tearing at the white prison. His voice came muffled. "Elara, wake up." For months, she had thought that voice was cruelty. A dream sent to remind her of what she could not have. Now she understood it had been his wolf searching. But understanding did not melt the snow. Elara pressed both palms upward. The weight did not move. The old voice from the vault whispered through the ice. "To leave the burial, name what kept you breathing." Elara almost answered anger, then pride, then pain. But none of those were the truest thing. She looked at her white wolf and remembered every morning she woke with dream snow under her nails, then stood anyway. She remembered binding herbs around border wolves who would not meet her eyes. She remembered eating alone and walking past the moon hall without looking at the throne. She had survived because some part of her had refused to let Ronan's mouth be the last name given to her life. "My own will," she whispered. The snow above her thinned. Not gone, thinned. In the black mouth, Ronan pulled the first chain from his wolf's throat. The pain made him see white. A frozen word fell and shattered at his feet. Dead. He picked up the shard. It reflected Elara beneath snow, pressing upward with bleeding fingers. Ronan's breath broke. He wanted to tear through the wall between wounds, to drag her out, to finally do in truth what he had done helplessly in dreams. But the old voice had warned them. 2 halves, 2 choices. He could not rescue her from the things she needed to name. So he turned back to his wolf and pulled another chain. Bond. The shard shattered. In the white burial, Elara heard cracking far above. Not snow. Words breaking. Her wolf rose to its feet. The veil around Elara's body loosened from her throat, but did not fall. A final knot remained over her heart, white as bone. The old voice whispered again. "To wake the bond, name what still hurts." Elara's hands trembled. "I hate that I still knew his scent in every dream," she said. The snow opened another inch. "I hate that part of me listened for him." Another inch. "I hate that when I saw him digging, I wanted him to find me." The veil knot pulsed. "And I hate that none of that means he is forgiven." The white wolf howled. The burial cracked open. Ronan heard that howl through the frozen mouth. His own wolf answered. He seized the last chain at its throat. This one was wrapped around the sentence itself. The word Selvera had forced through his lips. As Ronan pulled, the old rejection formed before him in ice. The bond is dead. He could not destroy it by denying it. It had happened. Elara had heard it. The court had witnessed it. So Ronan placed both hands on the frozen sentence and spoke the truth beneath it. "My voice was stolen. My duty was twisted, but the wound was carried by her." The sentence cracked. He pushed harder. "I will not ask her to bury that wound so I may feel clean." The frozen mouth shook. His wolf rose behind him, free enough now to stand. Ronan said the final words with blood on his tongue. The bond was buried, not dead. The ice sentence shattered. The black door opened behind him. At the same moment, Elara pushed through the snow above her and broke into moonlight. She stood in the dream vault again, gasping, veil torn around her shoulders, white wolf beside her with frost falling from its fur. Ronan emerged from the black door opposite her, one hand braced against the ice wall, his wolf shadow at his side, no muzzle now, only scars. For a breath, they only looked at each other. No court, no priestess, no words strong enough. Then the frozen thread between their wolves lifted from the floor and began to glow. Selvara screamed from the edge of the vault. The black frost remnants of her pearl gathered in her hand, shaping into a blade of dream ice. "If the buried bond wakes," she said, voice shaking with fury, "then I will cut it before the court can kneel to it." She lunged for the glowing thread. Elara and Ronan moved together, not touching, not commanding, choosing the same path. Their wolves leapt first. Black and white collided with Selvara's dream blade, and the entire vault burst open into the moon hall above. The dream vault shattered upward. Ice, moonlight, and wolf song burst through the frost burial veil into the moon hall. The court screamed as the vision no longer hung safely behind Elara like a distant nightmare. It spilled across the black marble floor, turning the throne hall into a frozen forest of memory. Silver thread stretched from pillar to pillar. Sleeping wolves appeared beneath the court's feet, half buried in translucent snow. Above the altar, the black and white wolves tore through Selvara's dream blade together. Elara's body gasped beneath the veil. Then her spirit and flesh snapped back into one. She staggered. Ronan caught himself at the same moment beside her, one hand gripping the cracked altar, his breath harsh, blood at his mouth. His black wolf shadow stood behind him in the waking hall now, no longer hidden behind throne or dream, its muzzle scarred but free. Elara's white wolf shadow appeared beside her, thin, wounded, alive. The court saw it and went silent. For a year, they had called her buried. For a year, they had called the bond dead. Now 2 wolves stood beneath the blue torches, separated by a glowing silver thread that pulsed between them like a heart refusing judgment. Selvara fell to one knee near the altar, still clutching the broken black frost pearl. Its shards had melted into her palm, and dark ice crept up her fingers. She looked at the court quickly, too quickly. Elara saw the calculation return. "The veil has been breached," Selvara said, forcing command into her voice. "Dream. Wolf blood has dragged forbidden bonds into the waking hall. If you let her continue, every buried scandal in the north will wake at once." A few nobles flinched, not because they believed her fully, because they feared what she might be right about. Council Lord Veyr, gray-haired and narrow-eyed, looked down at the sleeping wolf beneath his boots and stepped back as though from a grave. "What is this thing?" Elara's white wolf turned its head. The sleeping wolf at Veyric's feet opened one eye. The lord went pale. Ronan straightened. "A bond your house buried." Veyric's mouth tightened. "Majesty, be careful." Ronan's laugh was quiet and cold. "I have been careful for a year, and my mate was buried alive in my dreams. Mate." The word struck the hall harder than any howl. Elara looked at him sharply. Ronan did not look away from the court. He did not soften the word or reclaim it gently. He placed it before them like a blade and let every noble see the blood on it. Selvara's voice cut in. "You rejected her." "My mouth did." The frost burial veil lifted from Elara's shoulders, spreading wide behind her like torn white wings. The old female voice inside it spoke for all to hear. "Borrowed mouth, bound wolf, living bond." The court stirred in horror. Selvara rose, trembling with fury. The veil was never meant to speak against priestess law. "No," Elara said. "It was meant to bury women quietly." Every face turned to her. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. The dream vault had given her no throne, no crown, no sudden cruelty. only the terrible dignity of someone who would walk through her own grave and come back with snow still in her hair. You used it on Maris Veyr, Elara said. You used it on Ronan's grandmother. You used it on every Luna whose bond threatened a council bargain. And 1 year ago, you used it on me before I even knew my blood had a name. Salvara's expression sharpened. Dream. Wolf blood was outlawed because it made Luna stronger than kings. Ronan stepped beside Elara. Not before her, beside her. Then kings were too weak to stand beside them. A sound moved through the hall. Shock, fear, something close to awe. Salvara pointed at him with her frost-blackened hand. Listen to yourself. This is what I prevented. A king willing to shame his crown for a woman who can command his wolf. Elara's anger went cold. I have commanded nothing. Her white wolf moved forward, and the silver thread between it and Ronan's black wolf brightened. I asked the buried bond if it wanted to wake. The sleeping wolves across the hall lifted their heads one by one. Not all. Enough. Enough to make the court understand that silence had never been consent. Salvara saw power shifting away from her, so she struck where it would hurt most. If the bond wakes fully, she said, voice ringing through the hall, Winterlaw demands completion before dawn. King Ronan must either reclaim her as Luna before every house, or cut the bond himself with the veil. There is no third path. The nobles seized on the law like drowning men grabbing ice. Ronan turned to Elara. The whole court watched. This was the trap inside the truth. If he reclaimed her now, they would say guilt drove him, that dream wolf blood bewitched him, that Elara won status by exposing pain. If he cut the bond, Salvara would bury her again before the court could think. Elara felt the old snow return around her ribs. She wanted him to choose her. That was the wound she hated most. Even after everything, some hurt part of her still wanted the man who had rejected her to stand before the court and undo it with one sentence. But she had just fought through the burial made by a king's stolen mouth. She would not let another public sentence define her life. Ronan seemed to understand before she spoke. His face tightened with grief. I will not reclaim you like property returned to the throne, he said quietly. The court heard. Salvara smiled. Too soon. Ronan turned toward the altar. And I will not cut what I did not choose to kill. The frost burial veil trembled. Then you defy winter law, Salvara said. No, Elara said. She stepped forward, taking the veil in both hands. Cold bit her fingers, but she held it. We finished the law it was hiding. The veil's old voice whispered, Name the third path. Salvara went still. Ronan looked at Elara. She looked not at him first, but at her white wolf. It stood tired and scarred, but its eyes were clear. Then she looked at Ronan's black wolf. It lowered its head, not in dominance, not in apology, but in recognition of the pain it had failed to reach. Finally, she looked at Ronan. The bond does not wake because you reclaim me, she said. It wakes only if I choose to stand where I was buried. His eyes shone with something dangerous and unguarded, and if you do not choose it, then it remains mine to refuse. Ronan bowed his head once, before the court, before Salvara, before the torn veil and the sleeping wolves. Then I ask nothing as king, he said, only as the man whose wolf has been digging for you every night. Elara's breath caught. The silver thread between their wolves pulsed. Ronan's voice roughened. Will you let me stand beside the grave I helped make while you decide whether anything living should come out of it? The moon hall went utterly still. No demand, no claim, no crown laid over her wound. Only the choice Salvara had spent generations stealing. Elara closed her eyes. Under the floor of dream and waking, the first sleeping bond howled once. When she opened them, Salvara had moved. The priestess lunged for the frost burial veil with the last shard of black pearl, aiming not at Ronan, but at Elara's white wolf. Ronan's black wolf leapt, but Elara stepped first. She wrapped the veil around her own arm and caught the shard before it struck her wolf. Black frost entered her blood. The moon hall vanished into white, and this time, Elara did not fall into the burial. She opened it. White swallowed the moon hall. Not silence. Not death. A door. Elara stood inside the burial that had been made for her, but this time she was not beneath the snow. She stood above it. The frost burial veil wrapped around her arm in a spiral of ice and moon thread, black frost crawling beneath her skin from the shard Selvara had driven into the cloth. Pain moved through her blood, cold and sharp, but it did not pull her down. The white world opened beneath her feet, showing every layer of the dream grave she had survived for a year. There was the hollow where she had lain. There was the snow Ronan's wolf had torn through night after night. There was the silver thread between them, not clean, not whole, but living. And there was Selvara. The priestess stood on the opposite side of the burial, no longer wrapped in courtly silver. Here, in the dream beneath law, her robes were stitched from cut veils. Some were old and yellowed. Some were fresh with frost. Each one carried a woman's breath trapped inside its threads. Elara understood then why the veil had sounded hungry. It had been fed. Selvara looked at the torn veils around her and lifted her chin. You think this makes me a monster? Elara's hand tightened around the cloth on her arm. It makes you the keeper of graves that were not empty. I kept the north standing. You kept it sleeping. The white world trembled. Far above, through the open dream, Elara heard the moon hall, nobles shouting, wolves howling, Ronan calling her name, not with command now, but with fear sharpened into prayer. Selvara heard too. He will follow you anywhere now, she said. That is exactly what I tried to prevent. No. Elara looked down at the silver thread. You tried to prevent him from choosing where to stand. The burial opened wider. The court appeared around them like figures behind ice. Ronan stood in the moon hall with his black wolf beside him, both staring into the white dream that had unfolded from Elara's arm. Her body remained upright before the altar, eyes silver white, the veil glowing around her like torn wings. Selvara lifted the shard of black pearl. Then choose, dream wolf daughter. Wake every buried bond and watch the houses tear each other apart, or let me seal the veil again and walk away with your life. Elara looked past her. There, beneath layers of old snow, slept the bonds Selvara's order had buried. Merisvel's pale gold wolf. Lunar queens erased from songs. Mates separated for treaties. Wolves bound because their choices had frightened councils more than war. Not all could wake tonight. Elara knew that now. Too much grief released at once would become another kind of cruelty. Dream wolf blood was not a blade. It was a threshold. A threshold did not drag the dead into dawn. It opened when they were ready. Elara raised her marked arm, the frost burial veils shining from wrist to shoulder. I will not wake them all. Selvara's mouth curved in triumph. Elara continued, and I will not bury them for you. The triumph died. Elara turned toward the sleeping bonds and spoke with the voice that had survived under snow. Those who wish to remain sleeping may sleep. Those who wish to be named may be named. Those who wish to wake will wake by choice, not command. The burial answered, not with thunder, with breath. Across the white world, some sleeping wolves closed their eyes more peacefully, as if hearing permission for the first time. Others lifted their heads. A few stood. Merisvel's pale gold wolf rose fully from the snow, and behind it appeared the shape of a woman in moon white, her crown scar shining on her brow. Ronan's grandmother looked at Elara. Daughter of the buried door, Meris said, you have named the path. Selvara stepped back. No. The cut veils stitched into her robes began to loosen. One by one, the trapped breaths inside them escaped. Tiny silver lights rose from the fabric and passed into the snow. The frost burial veil around Elara's arm turned from killing cold to moonlit white. In the moon hall above, the court saw everything. They saw Selvara wearing the stolen veils. They saw the buried bonds choosing for themselves. They saw Elara refuse both vengeance and obedience. The old voice inside the veil spoke for all to hear. Burial broken, choice restored. Selvara screamed and lunged. Ronan's black wolf struck through the dream wall, but Elara lifted one hand, not to stop him, to show she could stand. The veil unwound from her arm and flew across the white world, wrapping around Selvara's wrist, then her other wrist, then her throat, not choking, only binding her in the very law she had used on others. The black pearl shard fell from her hand. It hit the snow and cracked open. Inside was one final stolen dream, Ronan's. The court saw it unfold above the altar. A year of nights. Ronan digging with bleeding hands. Ronan waking alone, staring at torn nails, unable to understand why grief smelled like snow. Ronan's wolf howling behind a frozen muzzle. Ronan whispering Elara's name in sleep, while his waking mouth remained too proud, too broken, and too bound to speak. Elara watched it, and her heart hurt in a way anger could not cover. It did not absolve him, but it made the wound honest. Selvara sank to her knees, bound in the frost burial veil. The old cloth no longer looked like a funeral shroud. It looked like witness, snow, shining with every breath it had stolen. Ronan stepped through the edge of the dream and entered the burial beside Elara. Slowly, with both hands open. "Elara," he said. She looked at him. His black wolf stood behind him, scarred and free. Her white wolf stood beside her, no longer buried, but still thin from the long cold. Ronan's voice lowered. "I will not ask you to forget." "Good." Pain moved through his face, but he nodded. "I will not ask you to forgive me tonight." "Good. And I will not name you Luna to mend my shame." That struck deeper. Elara searched his face and found no king's performance there, only a man who had finally learned that love spoken over someone's choice became another kind of burial. "What will you ask?" she said. Ronan looked at the silver thread between their wolves. It pulsed once. Alive. Unclaimed. "I ask to stand where I should have stood a year ago," he said. "Beside you, while you decide what this bond becomes." Elara's throat tightened. The dream snow softened under her feet. She had wanted him to beg once. She had imagined it in bitter hours after the rejection, his pride broken, his crown lowered, his voice full of regret. But the dream had given her something harder than begging. It had given her the power to say yes or no without being buried either way. She looked at her white wolf. The wolf stepped toward Ronan's black wolf. Not all the way. Halfway. Elara breathed in. "I will not return to the place I was rejected," she said. Ronan bowed his head. "Then it will no longer exist." "No," she said. "It will exist. I want them to remember where they watched me bleed." His eyes lifted. Understanding moved through them. Elara turned toward the watching court, visible beyond the dream-white veil. "The moon hall will not be cleansed of this night. It will keep it. Every rejected bond buried by priestess law will be recorded. Every Luna named dead while still breathing will have her name restored, and no veil will be placed on a living mate without her voice answering first." Marisvel's spirit lowered her head. "Law remade," the veil whispered. Selvara looked up, bound and pale. "You think mercy makes you strong?" Elara faced her. "No, choice does." The frost burial veil tightened once around Selvara, then settled into silver chains of witness across her robes. The dream opened. Elara returned to the moon hall in her body with a sharp breath. This time, she did not fall. Ronan stood beside her, not holding her, ready if she asked. The court remained kneeling or frozen in fear, surrounded by sleeping wolf shadows and silver threads now visible across the hall. Selvara knelt before the cracked altar, bound in the transformed veil, every stolen breath shining across her like written judgment. Ronan turned to the nobles. His voice filled the hall, rough but whole. "High Moon, Priestess Selvara Thorn is stripped of winter law. Her order will open every burial record before dawn." Council Lord Veric started to speak. Ronan's black wolf looked at him. The Lord lowered his eyes. Ronan continued, "No rejected mate will be named dead by court decree again. No bond will be severed under sleep. No Luna will be buried because her blood frightens men who call fear peace." Then he stepped back, leaving the center to Elara. A year ago, he had spoken the sentence that buried her. Now he refused to speak over her resurrection. Elara lifted the frost burial veil from Selvara's bound shoulders. It came freely into her hands, soft now, no longer hungry. The fabric shimmered with snow and moonlight. She placed it on the silver altar, not as surrender. As proof, "I was the buried Luna," she said to the court. No one breathed. Elara looked at Ronan once, then away from him, because this name was hers first. "I am Elara Veyne, dream, wolf, blood, walker of buried bonds, and I am not dead because a king's stolen mouth said so." The moon hall shook. Her white wolf lifted its head and howled. Ronan's black wolf answered, not over it, but beside it. Across the hall, sleeping wolf shadows stirred, some waking, some resting, each by its own will. The silver thread between Elara and Ronan brightened until it became moonfire, then settled into a quiet glow between them. Alive, unforced, waiting, Ronan turned to her, and before the entire court, the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee. Gasps broke like ice across the hall. Elara stared at him. He did not reach for her hand, did not ask the court to witness possession, did not call her his Luna as if the word alone could repair the grave. "Elara Veyne," he said, voice steady though his eyes were bright with a grief he no longer hid. "I rejected you with a stolen mouth. I searched for you with the only part of me they failed to bind. I do not ask to erase the year I left you buried." His throat moved. "I ask for the right to earn the place beside you that I failed to defend." The silence that followed was not empty. It was listening. Elara looked at the man kneeling before her, at the wolf behind him still scarred from its muzzle, at the veil on the altar, at the court that had come to watch her proven dead and now waited for her answer as if her voice were law. She did not step into his arms. Not yet. But she stepped forward, one pace, enough for the silver thread between their wolves to glow warmer. "Stand, Ronan," she said. He obeyed, not as king, as man. Elara held his gaze. "You may walk beside me while I decide." His face changed, not with triumph, but with something quieter and more dangerous to pride. Hope. Dawn touched the high windows of the moon hall, turning the blue torches silver. The frost burial veil rested on the altar, no longer a shroud for dead mates, but a witness to every living bond that had refused to stay buried. And as Elara Veyne walked out of the hall beside the Alpha King who had dreamed of saving her, the snow outside the palace began to melt from the roots upward.